Hello and welcome to the channel. As always, like the video, and if you enjoyed the story, leave a comment on if you would want more. This fanfiction was not created by me, but in the description there is a link to the fanfic so you can show your support to the creator and read along. Without any more delay, let's dive into the story.
Now look at how cute they all look. Anko smiled as she and Naruto stood in the treetops overlooking a small alleyway in the southern part of the Konoha. They stood together side by side and hid their presence from the genin that were down below. They had been passing by when they noticed Eiji chasing after an irate-looking Sakura who was running full force after Konohamaru Sarutobi. The young boy looked scared out of his wits when the pink-haired girl managed to grab his blue scarf and slowly pulled him towards her clenched fist. Somehow the boy managed to get out of her grasp but ended up running into a team of Suna shinobi. The male of the two wore all black with a large bandaged object draped over his back. His face was covered in purple paint and wore a cocky smirk on his face as he hoisted Konohamaru up in the air by the hem of his shirt. The girl next to him was the same height though clearly looked like the more mature of the two. Blonde hair was tied in 4 ponytails and wore a purple top that went down to her things with fishnets covering part of her shoulders. A red sash was tightly secured around her waist and on her back was a large fan almost the same size as her. Definitely a wind user in Naruto's mind. They watched as the two groups met with Eiji stepping forward and telling the boy, whose name was revealed to be Kankuro, to let Konohamaru down otherwise he would be sorry. The threat got a laugh from the blonde girl, whom was revealed to be called Temari. Naruto and Anko could see Kankuro look intrigued to start a fight with Eiji. As the son of the Kazekage, I'm looking forward to testing how weak the son of the Yondaime Hokage is. So that's the Kazekage's kids? Not bad, I guess. Though neither of them are higher than a high genin level. Anko muttered as they continued to watch the little display in front of them. Eiji glared at one another and Naruto could see him toy with one of the tri-pronged kunai he kept in his shinobi pouch. Kankuro dropped Konohamaru, who scrambled up and ran behind Sakura, forgetting about his earlier fear of the girl as said girl gently moved him behind her as she kept her eyes on the Sunanines. Kankuro, now is not the time to start a fight with a leaf shinobi. You know Baki-sensei will have our hides if we caused any trouble. Temari warned, though Kankuro didn't look in the listening mood as his hands were grabbing a hold of the object on his back. You want to use crow? Hee-hee-I-ee-ggi. Everyone heard, causing Naruto sigh. He had hoped no trouble broke out, but now the chance had gone up a notch now that his sister was here. Mito landed beside Eiji, jumping around like she had too much sugar for lunch. Old man Tucci said we can have all the ramen we want since the Chunin exams are tomorrow. Come on dash, she started but stopped when she saw the Sunanines. Who are the weirdos? The two Sunanin formed tick marks on their foreheads while Kankuro glared at the blonde-haired girl. He looked between the two siblings as he realized who she was. Huh. Even better. My 2 cents said the Hokage had twins, but I didn't know for sure until now. Kankuro took the bandaged object on his back and slammed it on the ground as Mito understood why Eiji looked so confrontational. She frowned and put her hands on her hips, moving her sword that was strapped to her back forward a little so the Sunanin could catch the glint from the handle. Should we step in? Anko asked but saw Naruto shake his head. Only if things get out of hand. We don't really need any incident between two shinobi of 2 different villages getting serious. Even if Suna are our allies, these are still the children of their Kage. Vice versa for our village. Naruto explained as he leaned against the side of the tree. When do you think Gourd Boy is going to stop hiding and actually show himself? Anko asked as they looked to the red-haired boy who was watching silently from the top of the trees. His attire screamed Suna shinobi and wondered how the boy could carry such a heavy-looking gourd with his skinny body. The kid looked like he hadn't slept for years with dark black bags under his eyes. They saw the boy begin shuffling around and lean forward just a smidge. Now it looks like. Kankuro. Stop being an embarrassment. The red-haired boy said, making everyone in the alleyway jump at his sudden voice and look up in the trees. They saw the red-haired boy glare down at them while Mito and Eiji looked surprised that neither sensed him or noticed he was there. Ga Gaara. Kankuro stammered as they all watched Gaara jump down, form the tree and land next to Kankuro. There was no emotion on his face, only a completely impassive look which chilled the Leaf Genin's spine. Naruto narrowed his eyes on him as he got a feel on his chakra and felt how malicious it felt. Something about the chakra felt familiar, but he couldn't place where. Peculiar. He whispered as he watched the Gaara talk down to his teammates while also revealing to the Genin he was also their brother. Baki-sensei is probably waiting for us at the hotel. Gaara said and went to leave, but they all watched him stop and now and stare over at the Leaf Genin. You. What is your name? Eiji raised an eyebrow at him but stepped forward, gently pushing his sister hand down when she tried to stop him. My name is Dash. No, not you. Gaara spoke, causing Eiji to suddenly go quiet and frown as he saw Gaara point towards Mito. You. Who are you? My name? My name is Minato Namikaze, and don't ever forget it. I'm the one that will be winning the Chunin exam this year, just like my Oniai-san. Mito said proudly, causing Naruto in the trees to break a smile. Why? Want to know you will be wiping the floor with you. No, I care nothing about that, and I will spill you blood on the ground as easily as all the rest I have encountered. He told her, making the twins and Sakura pale slightly at the declaration. No, mother, what's you dead? She doesn't like what you house. What you contain. She wants you dead. His voice slowly turned into a whisper before he began walking away. I will abide by mother. As he left, Temari and Kankuro followed after him as Kankuro put the bandaged object back onto his back. He shot the Leaf Genin a dirty look before they left. Once they were gone, they all let out a breath of relief, inwardly thankful a fight had not occurred that night. Mother? What a whack job. Sakura said before she turned her attention back on Konohamaru, who had a fearful look on his face when he saw the look she was giving him before bringing down her fist on the top of his head. Ah! How did he know? Mito whispered as her hand went to the seal on her stomach as her eyes followed after the retreating boy. No one's supposed to know. Next to her, Eiji wrapped his arm around his twins as he watched her earlier confidence wane, wanting to comfort before letting his gaze rest on the retreating Sunanin that slowly morphed into a frightful glare. Up in the trees, the playful humor between the two friends were now long gone as they witnessed what just transpired. Naruto. Anko said with her playful act gone and the serious Kunoichi now present. Both their eyes were focused on the Gaara as he left. He knows about her. How? Naruto wasn't sure at first either, but after mentioning how his mother spoke to him and the gourd that on his back, which he had an idea of what was inside, he came to the only logical conclusion he could think of. He wondered if his parents knew about this. Anko, what bijou lies with Suna? The one tail. Anko spoke before warning bells went off in her head. You think Dash? Yeah, I think so. That boy is the Jinchuriki of One-Tail Shikaku, and he's just picked Mito as his target for the Chunin exams. Next day. Good luck to both of you. I know you're both going to do great. Naruto smiled as he double-hugged the twins, who were happy to reciprocate the hug. Behind him were Minato and Kushina, who had just gave them both their good luck speeches and told them to pay attention to their proctors and to expect the unexpected. Mina was over at the hospital having her weekly lesson with Shizune. Of course we are. We're gonna kick ass and take names. Just you wait, Oniai-chan will be at the top in no time. Mito informed him as both she and Eiji crossed their arms and grinned. It was scary when they both copied each other's movements so organically. It must have been one of those weird twin things. Well, still, I want you both to look out for each other. Even if you might be opposite teams, I still want you both to look out for each other when you come across one another. No being too rough on each other, you hear? Eiji nodded, though Mito punched her left hand into the palm of her right. I'll try, but I can't promise. It caused Naruto to sigh and ruffle their hair, though both quickly smacked it away in annoyance. Alright, you two, you better get going. I know you don't want to be late. Minato spoke as he stepped forward. I know you would both do us all proud. Give them hell. Yes, sir. Both chorused before they took off, running to meet up with their teams. The three watched them go before they disappeared out of sight. The area was quiet without the voices of the twins. "Tusan, did you know the Kazekage's son was a Jinchuriki?" Naruto asked as he turned to look at his father. He heard him sigh and watched as he nodded his head. By the expression on Kushina's face, Naruto knew she was aware as well. "We knew. As part of our alliance with Suna, the name of the Jinchuriki of the village's bijou had to be known in order for the trust between our two villages to have a foundation. The identity of a Jinchuriki's a big deal even if some villages hide it and others don't," Minato informed. "Only myself, your mother and the elders are aware, while the Kazekage and their elders are aware of Mito. And the Kazekage's son," he informed them, making them both look alarmed. He seemed to know when they encountered one another yesterday. It shocked her that he knew and said she was now a target for his mother. "Geez," Minato moaned as he ran a hand through his hair. "I had heard the youngest of the Kazekage was a trouble kid, but this sounds worse than I thought. The Shikaku has been known to be one of the more violent of the bijou. We'll have to keep a close eye on him during the exams. Unless he does something that will get Mito or a leaf shinobi killed, then all we can do is observe for now." "So did everyone turn up in the end? The IWA group and Kiri group?" Naruto asked, prodding his father for information. "They did. They all arrived yesterday afternoon and evening," Minato told him before Kushina spoke up. "Naruto, are you sure you want to be the IWA representative's escort while she's in Konoha? I imagine she might be a little sore still about you beating her during your Chunin exams in Suna?" She expressed a not very happy look on her face when she spoke. She had not been very keen on the idea of Naruto volunteering to be the escort for such a kid's granddaughter while she was in Konoha for the peace talks. This was a routine job when an outsider came to the village, but she didn't like Naruto having to be that person. It was public knowledge what IWA thought about Konoha and Minato. Even if they were here for peace talks, it didn't ease her one bit. Naruto, however, waved off his mother's comments, knowing full well he didn't have anything to worry about their representative. At least he hoped he didn't. Don't worry about it, Kachan. I think I can handle her." His words didn't do much for Kushina, but she accepted it for the time being. However, inwardly she was already making plans on keeping an eye on them herself the first chance she got. No way was she going to let a kunoichi from IWA get the jump on her son and try anything funny. Naruto, though, didn't notice the determined look on his mother's face and instead made a turn to begin leaving. He's something he needed to look into before he met with his hot-tempered, fiery other half. As he made a few steps away from the house, he heard his father's voice call out to him. "Be at my office in 30 minutes, Naruto, to meet with her. Don't be late." Minato told him and got a salute from his son in response. "Got it, Tusan. I'll see you then." Once Naruto left, Minato stretched his arms before intending to oration to his office. He would need to be there to meet with the representative before his son made his way over. Deep down he was really hoping for the best and was tired of the animosity between their two villages. If he could finally be the one to bring about a peace between IWA and Konoha, then he would do whatever necessary. Before he could, though, he felt the arms of his wife wrap around his stomach and saw the sly look on her face when he turned to look at her. "Kushina? We have the house all to ourselves for a short while. Let's make good use of it," she whispered into his ear. Before Minato could respond, he felt his wife grab the hem of his pants and begin leading him into the house, slamming the door shut before the sound of clothes being removed and playful laughter began appearing. "With rookie Genin. Come on guys, keep up," Mito told her twin as she ran towards the room where the exam was supposed to begin. Behind her, AG and Team 7 along with Team 11 walked at a much slower pace than the excited blonde girl who had a certain spring to her step, excitement over the day they were about to have. She felt she was ready to take the next step in her shinobi career and was eagerly awaiting for the chance to elevate to the Chunin level. She knew Naruto was able to do so in only a year and at such a young age, and she wanted to try and top that. "I'm coming, Mito, please slow down. We have 5 minutes before the exam is said to start," AG told her, walking side by side Shikamaru and Sakura. Behind them walked Sai with his even-present smile on his face and Sasuke a few paces behind him. Everyone had noticed there was something a little different with their Uchiha friend and teammate when they all greeted one another this morning. He seemed a lot less tense and the air around him felt far more calm than the usual stern and hazy one he had carried for so long. Though he barely said anything since they grouped up, he did at least keep any negative opinions to himself and didn't try to belittle any of his team members or the other team. They weren't sure what had changed, but whatever it was, it had made the dark-haired boy less of a pain in their minds. He even helped them figure out the room on the floor beneath them was not the room for the Chunin exams but instead a room with a genjutsu placed over it to trick Genin into being late for the exams. The revelation surprised them, but Sakura voiced that they shouldn't be surprised that they were being tested even before the exam started. It was just another way to weed out the weak and those not ready for the next step in their shinobi careers. Someone's sure excited, Shikamaru voiced before sighing. Just looking at Mito be so excited made him exhausted. I can already tell this is going to be a drag. I should have just stayed in bed. Next to him, Eiji looked at him with a raised eyebrow. If you think that, then why are you taking part? Eiji got an insane look back from the Nara. You're kidding, right? I don't want to have my mother, your mother, and my teammate constantly hounding me if I said no thanks. Have you met them? They're all completely insane. Eiji turned his head and saw his sister barely keeping her excitement with a gleam in her eye that resembled their mother when something was getting her blood pumping. Thinking about, he really couldn't blame Shikamaru. He was used to Mito and her overly excited tendencies. Shikamaru was her natural opposite. Yeah, I can understand that, Eiji admitted before turning his head around and now looking towards Sakura. Are you okay, Sakura? You've been kinda quiet. Said pink-haired girl was off in her own little world as thoughts ran through her mind all about the Chunin exams. It wasn't until Eiji asked a second time that she realized he was trying to get her attention. Turning to look at him, she chucked nervously as scratched her forehead with her index finger in embarrassment. I'm okay, Eiji. I'm just thinking about the exams. Nervous? A little, she admitted. Do you really think we are ready for this? We really haven't been genin for all that long. She sounded nervous and Eiji picked up on it quickly, putting his arms behind his head as they walked towards the exam room. I am honestly not sure, but I don't think Kakashi-sensei or my parents would let us compete if they didn't think we were ready. We already know how dangerous mission can be. After all, with everything that happened in Wave, I think the three of us have all had that drilled into our heads. Sakura nodded. The Wave mission had been an eye-opener for all of them. But then again, the three of us have trained a lot in 3 months. I'm a lot faster and stronger than I was back in Wave, and so is Sasuke. Said boy was still a few paces behind them, though was listening in on what they were saying. And you have been studying and training with Miss Shizune. That means you have definitely got stronger too, right? I guess that's true. While what she had learned from Shizune was far from perfected or mastered, she could now tell people she could use the Shosenjutsu to a sufficient degree where it could benefit her and her team. She had also become quite proficient in dodging, now having Kakashi-sensei help her in that regard by having Eiji and Sasuke throw kunai and shurikens towards her around a training field. Her control was flawless as usual, even with her chakra reserves taking a good-sized boost and her fixation on Sasuke finally waning. Don't worry, Sakura. As long as we stick together, we will make it through these exams. That's a promise. Eiji reassured and placed an arm around her shoulders, briefly making Sakura's eyes widen in surprise. She swallowed her fear and nerves and tried to look more confident. She didn't want to let her teammates down. Finally getting to the door, Mito grabbed the door handle and pushed the door open, leading the group of 6 inside the room where all the other teams were waiting. Once they entered, they all stopped and all took a big gulp. Filling up the entire room were genin from all across the elemental nations, all crammed into a single room, leaving little breathing room between individuals and their teams. Most looked older than the group of Konoha shinobi, easily making them the youngest members of the exam. The oldest looking was a group of Kusa shinobi who looked to be in their late teens, possibly early 20s. Every single head turned in their direction and every face either had an emotionless face or a look of annoyance. Some were even sneering at them, likely due to their age and stature in comparison. That's a lot of people. Sakura murmured as she scanned the room. Well, my Tusan did say there was a lot of entrants this year. Almost every country sent genin this year. Eiji told her. He tried not to show it, but he was feeling a little intimidated at all the older genin that were looking in their direction. Hey guys! About time you all got here. The 6 all turned their heads and felt themselves breathe a little easier, noticing that Team 8 and Team 10 standing off to the side. Kiba had called out to them and waved them over with a grin settled on his face, while little Akamaru stood by his feet. Behind him, Ino and Shoji waved over to the group, as did Kurumu and Hinata. Shino stood silent as always, though did nod over to them in acknowledgement. Close to where they were stood was another genin team from Konoha, though stood few meters away from them. I'm glad to see you guys here, Eiji admitted as he high-fived Kiba. Behind Kiba he saw Ino looking in his direction and gave the blonde girl a short wave. Hey Ino-chan. The girl smiled brightly in his direction and stepped close to her crush, her hands behind her back. Hi Eiji-kun. As the group conversed, they tried to ignore the looks the other groups were giving them, trying to punk out and scare off the youngest members of the Chunin exams. On the opposite side of the room, the San siblings of Suna stood with their backs against the wall, looking over towards the members of the Rookies 12 they met earlier that day, especially the twin Namikaze. To think brats like them would be in the Chunin exams. I bet they won't last the first round. Kankuro muttered, his hands in his pockets with a lazy look on his face. He wasn't worried about the exams in the slightest. At least as long as his younger sibling didn't try to turn him into one of his latest victims. I dunno about that. 2 of them are the children of the Hokage and his famed Uzumaki wife. And I hear the rest of them are children from noticeable clans. They could be more than just a thorn in our side. Temari wondered aloud whilst responding to her younger brother. What do you think, Gaara? The red-haired boy didn't answer his sister and instead kept his gaze firmly in the blonde twins he met earlier in the day. Especially towards the Mito, with whom he felt a great deal of power emanating from. You will prove my existence. Outside. That's one packed room. I think there's even more genin in there than when we were in the Chunin exams. Naruto wondered aloud as he stared into the room from the building across the street. He stood beside Itachi, who was ever stoic and calm. Anko was elsewhere and already preparing to make a big entrance to the genin that managed to pass the first exam. You think they would come up with something different for the first examen instead of the same written test. Itachi shrugged. It's a useful first test. Help to weed out the ones who are not ready to take the next step and become a Chunin. Itachi scanned the large group of genin and gazed at them for a few seconds before stopping on the trio of San siblings. That the one? Yeah, that's him. Naruto looked towards Gaara with a cautious look. I have a feeling he might be someone who will cause our siblings some trouble throughout the test. He doesn't strike me as someone who will allow fear or caution to hinder him. I think he's already decided to lock onto Mito from their earlier meeting. It didn't sit well with Naruto that another Jinchuriki in taking an interest in his sister, but there wasn't much he could do about it for the time being. My sensory skills might not be as pinpoint as yours, but I can tell he has an enormous amount of chakra, which is likely due to the bijou he carries. I hope Sasuke does nothing to antagonize him. Well, you said Sasuke seems to be changing himself for the better since being told the truth about that night. Perhaps if he is as good as he thinks he is, then he can tell Gaara is not someone he wants to try to push and shove, so to speak. Despite the slow change in the youngest son of the Uchiha, the boy could still be a bit of a snob when it came to his own abilities and still made sure he was better than everyone else. Though his teamwork skills according to Kakashi was improving and he and Eiji had not bickered or fought nearly as much as they used to. The fact that Sakura didn't bother him anymore also seemed to lighten Sasuke's mood. The boy was still a miserable git in most people's opinions, but at least to his family he had come out of the shell he had created around him. Makoto was simply glad to have her son back. Here comes Hibiki. Naruto said as he sensed Hibiki walking through the building with his calm and rather dark chakra signature and neared the exam room. Behind him were a large group of chunin who would all help to officiate the test and follow the instructions Ibiki gave them. Guess we should get going. Agreed. I need to be back at Umbu HQ. If I leave now I should still make it on time. As much as the raven-haired Uchiha wanted to stay and continue to watch over Sasuke as he prepared for the first exam, he had duties elsewhere. You still planning on watching over exam 2 at the forest? Naruto saw his longtime friend nod before he watched Itachi disappear in a flock of crows, a mode of transportation he had gotten used to the Uchiha using since his returns to the village. Guess I should get going too. I got a IWA shinobi to see. He quickly turned away and soon headed over towards the Hokage building. 5 minutes later, a casual Naruto walked through the door to his father's office and met with a sight that he honestly was not all that surprised to see. His father behind his desk with his fingers laced together, while to his left Hiruzen stood looking outside of the window and looking out over the village. The reason for their serious persona Naruto knew was due to the young woman that sat in the seat directly opposite of Minato. He did his absolute best not to let a smile break on his face while in front of his father and grandfather figure. Kuratsuchi sat with her left leg thrown over her right leg while her arms were crossed. Her eyes were currently closed and looked to be in deep thought. She wore her usual IWA shinobi attire and looked near enough the same as she did when they had met up in Wave Country. Close to where she was sat was a large man much taller and wider in weight was stood to her side, slightly behind her, likely acting as her bodyguard. The silence in the Hokage office was almost at its peak the moment Naruto walked through the doors. Negotiations had been slow so far, not much progress was made, though it was to be expected at the start of what was going to be a series of meetings over the course of the Chunin exams. IWA were known to be quite hard-headed and stubborn when they wanted to be, along with being quite nitpicky. Though he had never met the Tsuchikage, he had an idea what he was like from Kuratsuchi. I hope I'm on time. He spoke as he walked towards the office desk, watching as his Hiruzen turned his head to give him a smile while Minato stood up and began to speak. You're just in time. It's been some years since you last met, but I'm sure you remember that Tsuchikage's granddaughter Kuratsuchi. Said girl slowly opened up her eyes and looked up towards Naruto, giving the younger blonde a glance at the pink eyes that he loved so much. He could see the corners of her lips fighting off the urge to smile similar to himself, though her eyes did have a look of playfulness to them, something he could recognize from their time spent with one another. As she stood up, her bodyguard stood up straighter and ensuring that he was close to his Kage's granddaughter. Kuratsuchi turned her head and looked up at Naruto while keeping her arms crossed against her chest. The Hokage and his predecessor watched as Kuratsuchi appeared to be sizing Naruto up in their minds, completely unaware what she was doing was simply an act. They tensed for a brief moment when her index finger poked Naruto in the chest a couple of times before finally speak. You look far more flaky than you did back in Suna. If they weren't here on official business, then both Minato and Hiruzen would have fallen flat on their faces at the remark. They were honestly expecting her to say something a bit more rude or even offensive to Naruto, and not something so minor or even playful in a sense. When they looked at Naruto, he didn't seem offended by it and instead chuckled and tucked his hands into his pockets. Well, it's nice to see you too. You look like you got stronger since we last met. Kuratsuchi let a grin grace her and hold her head high. I had hoped that defeat I handed you hadn't left too much of a mark on you. He inwardly laughed at the annoyed look that appeared on her face. What can I say? Defeat only pushes someone to become stronger. Gives us a purpose. Her eyes narrowed. My grandfather and father upped my training in the last few years. You'll find I'm in a very different league too back then. I have no doubt. Kuratsuchi tapped the floor with her foot. And I have no doubt you have been training too. After all, you managed to get into the bingo book as an S-ranked shinobi. How very impressive. Well, you should know. Your grandfather was the one that put me in there. To emphasize this, he took the bingo book that usually sat on his father's desk and flipped it open to the page he was on. He then turned it towards Kuratsuchi and made her look at the contents. I feel flattered IWA would hold me in such high esteem. It's no problem at all. IWA knows when to look out for any potential threats. Her earlier grin turned into a smirk which only made him smirk back at her. Despite the facade, the two had no problems challenging one another in such way. After all, when they met, they were trying to beat the snot out of one another. Their auras when together always held a sense that one another were trying to one-up the other. Even if it was something so trivial. Perhaps a future spar is in order. I think that might be in order. Behind Kuratsuchi, her bodyguard took a step forward towards them, watching Naruto intently to ensure he didn't try anything. Kuratsuchi was known to be a bit of a hothead back in IWA, and he knew her mouth sometimes got her into trouble. While he had no doubt she could hold her own against MOT Konoha shinobi, the young man in front of her was not any ordinary shinobi. Feeling as if the tension in the room was becoming a bit much and not wanting his son and their guest to begin speaking more with fists than their words, Minato quickly voiced an idea in his mind. Well, perhaps we could arrange something of that nature at a later date. Minato offered, standing up from his chair. Kuratsuchi-san, how about we continue our meetings tomorrow? We have a lot to discuss, and I expect we will be having many long discussions in the coming weeks during your stay. He looked over at his son. Perhaps Naruto could show you around the village. I suppose we can do that. I'll be here for some time, so I may as well get to know the village, especially if our two villages are going to be civil towards one another from now. I guess I can get a good look at what makes the village of tree huggers so special. Kuratsuchi looked back up at Naruto with an expecting look. Well, what do you say? A grin laced Naruto's face as he gave her a short bow. This way, milady. So is the village to your liking, Kunoichi-chan? Naruto asked as he wove in and out of the crowd as he led Kuratsuchi and her bodyguard through the Konoha marketplace. The market was booming with local and foreign traders and markets, mostly thanks to the Chunin exams being brought to Konoha this year. Every time a Chunin exam came to any of the shinobi villages, so did the businesses and travelers who understand the amount of attention the exams bring across the land and how many people get brought in. Though the tournament would not be starting for another month, many had already arrived in the village and set up shop. From fabrics to fruits, the entire marketplace shined with color and rich smells, leaving Naruto less than surprised at how big of attraction it had become. With so many people coming into the village, it was only natural security got increased, even with many of their ranks either on missions or having some part in the Chunin exams. Though no one could see them, he could sense the stationed Umbu all in their hidden locations. The civilians were none the wiser that they were being watched. Kuratsuchi meanwhile watched as the people went about their day, and it was exactly how Naruto had always described to her in their times together or the letters they exchanged via summons. It was bright with plenty of warmth that simply radiated from the people that lived in it. The style of the houses, along with the bright colors of the acres of trees that were both inside the village and surrounding the village, felt like she was looking at some kind of living painting. As a shinobi of IWA, Konoha had always been described to them in a certain way and what they should expect from it should they ever see. However, after finally being able to say she stood on leaf soil, she could honestly say the place wasn't so bad. Sure, to her, IWA was always going to be her favorite place in the world, which had a charm to it that only someone who lived there could truly understand. She could see Konoha coming in second place. Though she would never admit it to the blonde idiot she was in love with, otherwise she would never hear the end of it. I suppose the village is quite nice. It's no IWA, but then again IWA is unique in itself. Konoha isn't so bad. She saw him turn his head briefly and saw his lips quirk up into a grin before quickly turning back around. I guess that's the best I can receive, so I'll take it. What about you, Shinobi-san? What do you think of my humble home? The gruff-looking IWA shinobi only gave a loud grunt and didn't bother looking towards him. In fact, he had kept his eyes in front of him and not straying from the path Kuratsuchi was on. Not really interested in what man's opinion was, he spoke again to Kuratsuchi. Is there anywhere you would like to visit? Perhaps the hot springs? Konoha is known to have some of the best in the land. Anywhere will be fine. Wherever you decide will be adequate. Besides, I wouldn't want people peeking on me while I go in the springs. I hear Konoha has a bad habit of people peeping on women here. She smirked and a playful glint was evident in her eyes. I wouldn't want the wrong person getting a sneak peek. No, But I can bet there's someone you wouldn't mind teasing with that very idea. He thought before he went to answering her. Of course. Perhaps the top of the Hokage mountain would be a good choice to visit next. The view of the village from the top is second to none. Then please lead the way. Then again, by how slow you walk, we likely won't get to the top until it's dark. He did his best to ignore her little jab but still ended up rolling his eyes at the comment. Unbeknownst to Kuratsuchi and her bodyguard, the two were, in fact, being watched from a short distance away by the unlikeliest person who was keeping to the shadows of the village, making sure to stay out of Naruto's line of sight and not getting picked up by his sensory abilities. It was only luck that Naruto was currently only using his sensory abilities those close and around himself and Kuratsuchi. Peeping up from behind a wooden crate belonging to one of the many market traders, the violet eyes of Minato and Namikaze glinted as she stared off towards her brother and the two he was escorting around the village. She had caught sight of them as she was passing the Hokage building after leaving a friend's house. She had thought about going to visit her father but instead spotted Naruto and his guests. She didn't care much for who the man was that was paying little attention to Naruto but instead was focusing on the black-haired girl that seemed to be walking a little too close to her beloved Nichan for her liking. She couldn't hear what they were saying yet she didn't want to get too close with the chance of being spotted. So she hung back and kept an eye on them both. Naruto, however, despite not showing it, was fully aware of Mina tailing them from a distance away. He didn't need his sensory abilities to tell someone was falling. That, and there were only two people with that shade of red hair in Konoha and they were too short to be his mother. That left only his youngest sister. I almost feel bad for spotting her straight away. Then again, I know Mina better than most. Both his sisters could get a little jealous when his attention wasn't on them, and no doubt him being seen with a girl neither recognized likely would not have been initially well received. At least, she is quieter than Mito. She'd be shouting it to the entire village. What are you looking for? He heard as he turned his head to look back towards Kuratsuchi and saw her leaning in close. His eyes immediately went over towards the bodyguard but quickly saw he was distracted by a few young women that were grouped around one of the many market stalls. Seeing a brief moment to not have to act around Kuratsuchi, he quickly jumped into the conversation. Turn behind you and look straight down the road we walked. He watched her turn her head and saw her eyes beginning to scan the road. Now look towards the stall we passed a half a minute ago with the bright purple fabrics decorating the top. What about Kuratsuchi started before quickly stopping when she watched a small head pop out to the side of the stall. The red hair couldn't be missed now that it had been seen. Is that who I think it is? Yep, that's Mina. She's been tailing us since we left the Hokage building. I noticed her when we left but didn't want to say anything. Despite her usual tough girl appearance, even Kuratsuchi couldn't help but let her softer side appear at what Naruto just said. She was also glad she could finally put a face to the little girl that Naruto had told her so much about. The red hair really did make her stand out against the crowd and she was surprised she didn't notice her sooner. Nah, how sweet. Little Nichan trying to protect her big Onii-san. She lifted her hand and very swiftly pinched his cheek before retracting it back to her side. I bet you're like a giant marshmallow when it comes to her, aren't you? She grinned when he didn't answer and knew she had hit the nail right on the head. She could see a picture now with Mina commanding her brother to do her bidding for her and Naruto following her. Orders like a good little puppy. The women in Naruto life really had him well trained, and it was nice to see it wasn't just her that had him wrapped around her finger. All Naruto did was groan in annoyance as he rubbed the spot on his cheek that got pulled before quickly they fell back into their act as Kuratsuchi's bodyguard, who had finally taken his eyes away from the group of women and focused back onto Kuratsuchi. He grunted when he noticed Naruto was looking at him, prompting Naruto to shrug and look back towards him. Both he and Kuratsuchi wore a smile as they went to their next destination. Shunin exam. Congratulations, you all passed the first test, Ibiki announced as he looked out across the room and saw all the remaining teams. The sound of the genin letting out sighs of relief was echoed throughout the room as every genin slumped back into their chair feeling like they had just managed to avoid getting hit in the face with an exploding paper tag. That was more intense than I thought it was going to be, Sakura admitted as she ran a hand across her forehead. Her hands and her forehead were all clammy from the sweat that had built up in the last 5 minutes when the true task of the written test had been revealed. Never in her life had a written test been built up with so much tension and worry before, which made the written exam for the genin test look like a cakewalk. She wondered what those that chose not to take the 10th question must have been feeling or would be feeling once they found out that the true test was to take the question. Whether they were willing to push forward despite the odds being stacked against them. There was more than one occasion during the last 5 minutes where Sakura had wanted to lift her hand in the air and not to take the question. Yet something inside of her was stopping her. She didn't want to fail her team nor let those that believed in her down. She had seen both Eiji and Sasuke when the announcement had been made, and it amazed her at how calm they both were able to keep themselves. Some like Ino, Kiba and Temari had voiced their displeasure but still stuck to taking the question. No one wanted to let the other down nor be the one to get left behind while everyone else continued to climb forward. "You okay, Sakura?" She heard Eiji ask from 2 rows behind her and turned her head to look at him. His hands were behind his head and his breathing was hard, telling her he was more worried than she realized. She smiled and gave him a small thumbs up. "I'm okay. Mentally exhausted, but I'm okay. That was more intense than I thought." "I know what you mean. I'm glad we managed to stick through it, though." Eiji then looked over towards Sasuke, who had turned his gaze in that direction at the same time. The 2 boys' eyes met for a brief moment before both just gave the other a quick nod. Across the room, the team that was left quickly grouped together to celebrate their passing of the first exam, however brief they could. None was more excited than Mito, who was punching the air in delight and quickly grabbed Shikamaru and Sai into tight headlocks, much to Nara's ire. "We kick as much butt," she voiced as a megawatt grin was on her face that lit up the entire room. She was on her way to the top, and there not going to be anyone who would stop her. Moments later, the window to the side of the room smashed and everyone watched as a figure came through the window, rolled across the ground and stopped just in front of Ibiki, who looked more annoyed than he had been during the entire hour. With her hands on her hips and a smirk that promised pain, Anko stood in front of the entire exam hall in her usual attire, looking out across the large room with a sick gleam in her eyes. Behind her, a banner appeared being held up together by 2 kunai sticking into the ceiling that read, "Here comes the second test's proctor, the wonderful and sexy Anko Mitarashi." Across the room, most were looking at the woman in shock at how she entered the room, while others blushed at her attire, seeing the curve of her breasts through the mesh shirt. The only ones not reacting in either way were Mito and Eiji, who gulped at the sight of their Oniachan's longtime friend and comrade. They both remembered what happened the last time they sparred with the purple-haired woman. Though both saw it more as being tortured by the crazed Kunoichi. They still remembered all the bites they had on their arms from the snakes chasing them. Why did it have to be her? Looking out across the room, Anko couldn't help but let her look drop when she saw how many of the teams were left. She thought Ibiki's test would have at least got rid of 2/3 of them, yet instead almost half the room was still filled. She guessed they must have been about 70 to 80 people left, therefore leaving around 25 teams still participating in the exams. "I think you're beginning to lose your touch, Ibiki. There's still a whole load of them left. I guess we just have a good crop of potential chunins this year," was all Ibiki said before turning around and quickly leaving the room, his long black jacket whipping into the air as he turned around. "Yeah, well, I guess it's up to me to weed out the weaklings that somehow managed to get past you." Putting her hands on her hips, Anko stared out across the room and began speaking to all the genin. "All right, you maggots, listen up and listen well. I don't know how you all managed to get past Ibiki's test, but if I had to, I'd say it was nothing but luck. You will all find very quickly that your luck has just run out." A genin from Kusa called out, "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means what I have planned for all you in the second test will make this test look like a cakewalk in comparison. I'm not having any pencil pushers think they're ready to become a chunin. Now, just so we're clear, my name is Anko Mitarashi, Jonin of Konoha and all-around badass. From this point on, what I say goes. If I tell you to jump off a bridge, then you jump off a bridge. We clear?" There was an audible mumble throughout the room that quickly bugged Anko. "I said, are we clear?" "Yes, Mitarashi san." Grinning, Anko scanned the room and quickly zeroed in on two very familiar blondes and one duck-haired emo. Well, looky here. Naru and Tachi's baby siblings are still with us. She swept across and quickly planted her in the seat next to Mito, who gulped at how close she was sitting next to her. Nah, are you scared of me? I don't bite, at least not that much. Mustering up the courage, Mito stood up from her seat and pointed her finger in Anko's face. You don't scare me, Anko-nachan. I'm gonna be a chunin whether you're the proctor or not. Just you wait and see. The people around the room thought Mito was either very brave or very stupid. I don't scare you, huh? Anko asked before smirking. Eiji could only shudder as he wondered what kind of untold horror his sister had just unleashed upon herself. Well then, let's put that to the test, shall we? Anko leaned in and pulled Mito closer to her as everyone watched as Anko began whispering something into her ear. Everyone watched as Anko whispered some unknown words into her ear while Mito's face was slowly turning redder and redder, eyes widening to the size of dinner plates. A moment later, Mito managed to break away from Anko and threw her hands over her ears. LA, I'm not listening, LA, lala. Was what she repeated aloud as Anko cackled, glee evident on her face at how Mito reacted. LA, that's disgusting, LA. Steadily, Eiji raised his hand in the air. Anko-san, what did you tell Mito to get her to act that way? Eiji asked, though dreading what the answer was going to be. Anko turned around and looked at the other twin. I told her about the night your brother and I had hot and passionate sex. Immediately Eiji went ghost white and followed his sister's actions, throwing his hands to ears and yelling out anything to stop Anko's voice from getting through. All the others genin made gagging noises except for Sakura, who secretly began imagining the two together and hid her blush. The sight of the twins looking and sounding mortified warmed her to her heart, and yet she had one more thing she needed to say to fully get that warm fuzzy feeling she loved so much. Now, before I take you to where the second task will be held, I have one thing to say. Anko pointed her finger straight towards Kiba, who looked surprised to see her pointing his way. You, Hana's little brother, just so you know, I'm having your sister tonight. Laughing as Kiba followed suit to the Namikaze twins, Anko headed towards the window, where she crouched onto the window and prepared to jump towards the building just opposite them. I want every single one of you to be at training ground 44 in 30 minutes. Anyone not there will be eliminated from the Chunin exams and will find a snake in their bed tomorrow morning. Letting the warning hang there, Anko left the room, leaving behind the scared-looking genin and 3 members of the Konoha rookies wishing they could forget what she had told them. Hokage Monument. So what do you think? Nice view, huh? Naruto said as he stood at the top of the Hokage Monument with Kuratsuchi and her bodyguard looking over the entire village. Beside him, Kuratsuchi stood looking over the village for the first time and allowed a smile to grace her face. It was very beautiful the way the sun hit the tops of the trees that surrounded the village and enhanced the warmth of the gravel and stone around them. Naruto didn't sense Mina in the nearby area and instead could sense her heading back home, where their mother was likely preparing dinner. No doubt she would fill in Kushina of what she had seen today. Who knows, maybe Kaa-chan planned to have her tail me. Now that was a thought. Yes. It's very nice. It wasn't a lie and didn't need to act a certain way with her bodyguard hanging back. He too was staring out at the village and, while would not admit it, found the view to be rewarding and mentally saved a picture for future thoughts. Do you come up here often? Naruto nodded. I do, though I normally sit on the stone faces of Kaige. Usually on top of the Sandame's head. I come up here a few times a week to watch the sunset. That must be a great view. It is. Perhaps sometime during your stay you could see it. It's not a sight one could forget very easily. No, I imagine it's not. She breathed calmly and wished her bodyguard was not with her right now. Despite not being overly affectionate in public, she did feel the urge to lean into the young man that stood beside her, to feel his warmth against the sun that bore down on them. We have a place similar to this that allows us to look over the village. I could compare the sight in the same way to this one. Really? Yeah. Right in the center of the village is the Hokage Tower, a tall building higher than the other buildings. The Tsuchikage is located at the very top and looks over the entire village in a full 360-degree view. She said. I would go there a lot when I was younger or when I spent the day with my grandfather. You could follow the entire trail of the sun from dawn to dusk. That sounds nice. If these meetings go well, then perhaps I could get to see it one day too. Kurotuski shrugged. Maybe, but who really know? Besides, I haven't agreed to anything yet when it comes to our two villages. These meetings could go belly up for all we know. That's true. Naruto smiled, not taking his eyes off the village. Unknown to Kuratsuchi's bodyguard, who was once again not paying attention to his charge, Naruto and Karachi's hand edged closer together just enough to where their fingers rubbed against one another. The entire time they were up on the Kage monument, they kept touched and held the other's hand for as long as possible without raising any suspicion. Training Ground 44. This is Training Ground 44? I've never been here before. Eiji muttered as he looked through the chain fence that spread all the way across the front of the Forest of Death. He stood at the front of his team while Sasuke and Sakura hung back yet stared straight back at the forest. Just at first glance, all the genin knew this was no ordinary forest, while Eiji, Mito, and some of the other clan children had heard about the famed forest that few shinobi in Konoha would dare to enter. They had heard many stories about those that went in and never came out. That creatures far larger and dangerous than any other animals lived and spawned here. Ka-chan would never let us come anywhere close to this place. She said we could easily get hurt here. Even worse if we went too far in. Mito added as she stood beside Shikamaru, who this time had a thoughtful look on his face as they looked at the dark and dangerous forest. Alright, all you kiddies, listen up. Here are the rules for the second task. If you ignore or don't listen to what I'm about to tell you, then it could mean certain death. Anko told them, jumping up onto a wooden crate and looking down on all the genin. For this task, each team will be given one of two scrolls, the Heaven Scroll and the Earth Scroll. Digging into the pockets of her trench coat, Anko pulled out one blue scroll and one white scroll. Then each team will enter through one of the gates along the fence of Training Ground 44, where you will then enter the forest. Gasps could be heard and shocked looks appeared on the faces of the genin, but Anko continued. You will spend 5 days in the Forest of Death, where you must survive and gain the opposite scroll that you have been given. Meaning, if you have a Heaven Scroll, then you need to acquire an Earth Scroll. Once you have obtained both, you must make your way straight to the tower located in the center of the forest. What do we do for food? Choji asked, looking horrified at the prospect of no food for 5 days. Then you find some. Once you're in that forest, it's all up to you and your team. Scavenger, hunt, whatever it takes. Sounds intriguing. I look forward to it. A feminine voice spoke, making Anko look over towards the Kusa shinobi. It came from the tall girl that stood in front of her two teammates. There was a gleam to her eye that made Anko believe she was looking forward to the idea of being in the Forest of Death. She didn't look like anything unique and wore a standard Kusa nin attire. Yet looking at her, it made Anko feel a bubble of anxiety appear in the bottom of her stomach. Nothing major, but it made Anko look twice at the girl before looking back towards the rest of the genin. Something about her feels off. Now line up with your teams and get your scrolls. Once you receive them, head straight towards your designated gate. Come on guys, let's get started. We do this, we will be one step closer to being Chunin. Mito declared before racing towards the Chunin tent where the scrolls were being handed out. Everyone else follows slowly after her, none looking in any rush to go into the forest where they could potentially die. 30 minutes passed by quickly as the teams all stood at their chosen gates. Eiji, Sasuke, and Sakura all stood beside one another and readied themselves as they waited for the gates to open. Team 7 found themselves waiting in front of Gate 6, while further down the line Mito, Shikamaru, and Sai waited outside of Gate 13. All the other teams did exactly the same and waited for their respective gate to open. Team 7 and Team 11 both got a hold of a Heaven Scroll, though were not allowed to tell anyone outside of their teams. I can do this. I won't fall behind. Mito and Eiji both thought. Both hoped both their teams had the same scroll as each other, as neither one wanted to have to fight one another. Soon enough the buzzer went off and all team immediately shot into the forest, leaving only small dust trails behind them. Anko watched all the teams vanish from sight as other chunins and special jonins went to fulfill their duties now that the second exam had fully started. She, however, intended to stay for the duration of the 5 days due to being the proctor. However, the feeling from earlier hadn't gone away and she felt something clawing away in the back of her mind. It didn't sit well with her and decided she needed to act. Itachi. A moment later Itachi appeared next to her in his umbu gear and face covered by the crow mask. She knew her longtime friend was in the area and had been assigned to look over the exam in secret. She was going to need him for this. The Kusa-kunoichi that spoke out during the explanation. Something isn't right about her. Keep an eye on her. Got it. He disappeared as quick as he appeared, leaving Anko looking out through the forest as the sound of genin battling for the scrolls could already be heard not just a few minutes from entering. Golden Leaf Hotel. As the day came to an end, Kuratsuchi hummed to herself as she began drawing a bath for herself in her hotel suite. The rest of the afternoon had gone fairly well and kept up her act with Naruto for the duration of their time together. No expected a thing, or, at least, she hoped no one could see through the charade. Though she enjoyed her time with the blonde knucklehead that somehow won over her heart, it still felt incomplete being unable to act normally around one another. Touring the village was nice, but she just wished she could have done it as herself and not behind a mask. The Hokage had the sense to make her stay in the village as lavish as possible and to ensure she was comfortable. That reason alone showed that Konoha was serious with wanting to begin building bridges with IWA. The Yellow Flash, though infamous and greatly hated for his part in the many lost shinobis her village faces during the Third War, had thus far been generous towards her. Her bodyguard Jairu was passed out asleep in the next room, out like a light the moment his head hit the pillow. In all honesty, she wasn't sure why her grandfather had assigned him as her bodyguard during her stay in the Leaf, but she had no say in the matter. While she would have preferred her old teammate Akatsuchi, since she could reprimand and keep him in the dark far easier due to being rather clumsy and somewhat dim, she made do and ensured Jairu saw and heard nothing of her time with Naruto. Kuratsuchi. She heard, making a smile flicker on her face as she turned around. The window could be heard latching shut again before she felt the warmth of Naruto's arms wrap around her. She fell back against the embrace before turning and wrapping her arms around his neck while his snake around her waist. They leaned in and pressed their lips together while slowly leaning against the wall. They stayed that way for a few minutes as they relished in being able to properly touch and embrace one another after being so close to each other the entire day. It was driving them both nuts and planned on enjoying hat time they had this evening. No one saw you come in? No one. I made sure to slip in while the umbu that have been keeping an eye on you since you got to your room switch over. We have about 5 minutes. 5 minutes was hardly enough and Kuratsuchi showed her displeasure by sighing unhappily. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his shoulder. I know it's not easy, but these talks between Konoha and IWA could be the bridge we need to finally go public with our relationship. I know. It's just hard. She felt his head lower and sit on top of her own while they stayed together in a tight hug. I'm tired of all the secrecy. I just want us to be a normal couple and be able to go out in the street and do things couples usually do. We will. Once these Chunin exams are all over with and the talks begin to go more positively, then we can reveal it to everyone. Naruto cupped her face between his hands. No one wants to reveal our relationship to everyone more than I do, but I know if we do it too soon then it could have a harmful effect on how these talks go. I know we have talked about this before, but we need to think about the well-being of the village before we make this announcement. Her hands came up and rested on top of his. Yeah, I guess that is true. Our villages will likely feel the effect of this relationship. The son of the Hokage dating that such a kid's granddaughter. Sounds like something out of our village's nightmares. Naruto laughed, which prompted her to laugh as well. Despite their talk, it did humor them at wondering how their families would take it. Some would undoubtedly take it better than others. I guess it would be a big deal, huh? Yeah, the biggest. Both laughed as they held one another as they enjoyed the thoughts. A moment later Naruto peeked through the door to the bathroom and saw the bath still running. You running a bath? A sly grin appeared on Kuratsuchi's face as she played with the hem of the white bathrobe, pressing herself against his chest. I might have been. Why? An equal-looking smirk appeared on Naruto's face as he enjoyed her current action. Well, I have noticed I am beginning to smell a bit. Maybe due to all that touring I've been doing today. I think a bath might be in order. Well, we can't have that now, can we? I guess I might have to give you a good scrub down with the soap. Only if I can do the same with you. She took his hand and began leading him into the bathroom and pushed the door open with her free hand. She stopped momentarily and looked at him. Won't it be a little suspicious if you suddenly walk out of here with your umbu watching? Don't worry about that. I know how to snake my way around them and I can sense everything around the hotel. We will be fine. Before she could say anything else, Kuratsuchi suddenly released a high-pitched yelp as Naruto suddenly pulled her towards him and lifted her up with his hands resting on her barely robed bottom. Besides, I'm not missing out on our quality time together. Their lips then met together and slowly Naruto walked inside the bathroom as Kuratsuchi slowly peeled off her robe. As they spent their quality time together and basked in each other's long-awaited warmth and desire, a pair of wrinkled onyx eyes looked over at the hotel from the top of the Kage building, his hands behind his back and standing as stiff as a board. He had seen the young blonde sneak into the hotel, having been keeping an eye on him since he had left the Kage building earlier in the afternoon. He felt something was off and didn't want to pry, but felt it was his duty to do so as someone who loved and cared for Naruto. He was now glad he did. Naruto, what have you done? Naruto had a spring in his step as he entered his apartment, a smile gracing his face as he returned, having finally spent some time with Kuratsuchi in his own village. Granted, it was all still in complete secrecy, but it was still a good step forward. They got to enjoy a good soak in the bath, a bit or personal time, and a short meal after Kuratsuchi ordered room service. He checked it wasn't poison just to be on the safe side. He stayed for nearly 2 hours before he called it a night. He didn't want to push his luck and stay the night despite how enticing it was. Kuratsuchi didn't make it easy either, having slipped into the bed patting the spot next to her. As tempted as he was, he knew it was better for him to go home. They had already pushed their luck enough for one night. Good evening, Naruto. Naruto almost jumped out of his skin as he whirled around and saw Hiruzen sitting down in the armchair Itachi would regularly use when he was with them. The Sandaime was in his usual daily wear with his arms crossed against his chest with his head down and eyes closed. If Naruto hadn't known any better, he would have said he had fallen asleep in the chair, but he did know better when it came to his grandfather figure. He was also surprised that he couldn't sense him, yet he knew if there was anyone that could mask their chakra signature and hide it from him, then it was going to be Hiruzen. He was known as the Professor for a reason. Hey Gigi, you scared me there. What are you doing sitting here in the dark? Naruto asked as he took his jacket off and hung it on one of the hooks beside the door. We didn't make plans, did we? If we did, I'm really sorry that I forgot. Hiruzen shook his head. No Naruto, we did not have plans. I simply decided to stop by. I have something I would like to talk to you about. Intrigued, Naruto walked over and sat on the side of the sofa closest to Hiruzen. He was curious what he wanted to talk about so late at night. You sure you should be up, Gigi? Normally you're in bed by 9. You sure that's good for your old bones? You'll find, Naruto, these old bones still have some kick in them yet if you'd like to get another demonstration? Hiruzen asked, but Naruto shook his head. He wasn't looking for a rematch of their battle in the Chunin Stadium anytime soon. No, I was wondering where you have been tonight. Hiruzen watched him like a hawk, but Naruto didn't let anything slip. I was with Anko over at the Forest of Death. I wanted to ask her how the twins were doing when she saw them. I left a little while ago when Itachi came to ask the same for Sasuke. Is that so? Yeah, that's right. Naruto clarified, yet Hiruzen didn't look very convinced. He just continued to look at Naruto with stern eyes, bringing his hands up and placing them together underneath his chin. Naruto leaned back in the chair, not thinking anything was wrong, yet Hiruzen began to lean towards him. He motioned for Naruto to lean closer, prompting the blonde to return forward. "Tell me, Naruto, why are you lying to me?" Naruto's eyebrows shot up in surprise as he tried to defend himself. A frown appeared on his face and began scratching the back of his head. "Gigi, I'm not lying." "Why would you think I'm lying?" Hiruzen felt like smirking yet instead kept a cool facade on his face, something that always worried Naruto whenever he got into trouble. His grandfather figure had ways of finding out if someone was lying, which was something Naruto thought he was good at. Or at least, he had been relatively good at up to this point. "Because Naruto, I visited Anko shortly after the genin went into the Forest of Death for their second exam and was told she sent Itachi inside the forest to keep an eye on some unsavory character that didn't sit well with her." Panic quickly built up in Naruto's chest and felt a lump forming in his throat. "That, and I saw Hana heading over towards her location an hour ago. I doubt you spoke to her while they were likely having one of their more intimate moments." Naruto swallowed the lump in his throat and shuffled nervously in his seat. He thought he had been so careful. He snuck past the Umbu with little problem and made no sound as he went in and out of the window, yet somehow he had failed to notice Hiruzen had been watching him the whole time. "Am I slipping up? Is the gap between us that much still? Naruto, tell me the truth, or should I take a guess as to why you snuck into that Tsuchikige's granddaughter's room at the Golden Leaf Hotel? If Hiruzen was much of a gambling man, then he would have won the grand prize at any casino." From the pale shade, Naruto's face suddenly turned a deathly shade of pale that didn't suit him. Hiruzen knew he had hit the mark and now only had to wait for Naruto to admit to what he was suspecting. I've slipped up. What do I do?" Naruto thought as he looked back at the state Hiruzen was giving him. As much as he had wanted to tell people about their relationship, he had hoped it would have been on his own terms and not suddenly sprung on him in such a manner. Yet in a sense, what he was currently feeling with the surprise and the shock would likely be what the people they were going to tell would feel. Especially with members of his family. "I don't know what to do. I'm not prepared for this. At least not like this. Just tell me the truth. I'll only find out by some other means, my boy." Hiruzen responded as if he was reading his mind. "If it helps, then I will keep this conversation between us. This secret you have that ties you to the Iwa Kunoichi will remain a secret until you both decide to share it with others. However, right now I am asking you, Naruto, is there something going on between the two of you?" "Yeah, Gigi," Naruto whispered. "There is something between us." "What is that, my boy?" Hiruzen asked softly and put his hand on his shoulder. The two stared at one another as silence ran across the room as it waited for Naruto to speak. The silence felt like it lasted forever, but Hiruzen waited patiently for Naruto to speak. An internal fight was going on in Naruto's head as he tried to weigh the pros and cons yet couldn't come to any kind of resolve. It was all so sudden that he said the only words he could think of. "Gigi, I love her." Like a chain reaction, the look on Hiruzen's face softened, as did his eyes as he slowly brought his arm back to being crossed against his chest. Naruto watched Hiruzen from the corners of his eyes as he looked down at the ground, still shuffling in his seat as he now waited for the next words to come out of Hiruzen. He wasn't sure how he was going to react. In all honesty, he wasn't sure how he felt towards Iwa. The conversation never really came up past the basic information. "Naruto." Hiruzen eventually spoke while taking a deep breath. "Start from the beginning, Naruto. How did this all start?" "Well, Gigi, it went like this. It started, I guess, when I was on a mission with Makoto-sensei and Anko 4 years ago, where I encountered Raiga Kurasuke." Over the next 20 minutes, Naruto told Hiruzen everything. From the encountering Kuratsuchi in the field against Raiga to their meeting at the Fire Daimyo's palace during his first year at being one of the Guardian 12. How they grew closer during her brief time there and how they remained in contact for the next 2 years thanks to the use of his summons so they could meet up when it was at all possible. Naruto made sure to include how careful they were not to raise suspicion when they were together, not wanting Hiruzen to think he was always sloppy when it came to Kuratsuchi. Naruto told Hiruzen how Kuratsuchi made him feel. How she brought out the best in him and how she motivates him to get stronger not only for her but for his family and vice versa. How she constantly keeps him on his toes and how much he loved her laugh when she shared it with the world. Unknowingly to Naruto, the more he talked about Kuratsuchi, the more Hiruzen began to understand and the less concerned he was becoming towards this issue. Hiruzen didn't say anything and just listened to what Naruto had to say. I see. That's a lot to take in. Hiruzen admitted. It was a lot to wrap around in the old Kage's head, but he had to go back to what Naruto said earlier. You really do love her, don't you? Yeah, Gigi, I really do. She means more to me than anything in the world. Naruto whispered as he ran a hand through his hair, yet a smile was on his face as he spoke about her. I've never felt this way about anyone else before. He really is in love. Hiruzen thought as he nodded his head. The way he speaks about her, it's how I speak about my Biwako. His eyes aren't lying. Not about any of it. Why did you keep a secret all this time? Why have you kept this secret for the last 2 years? Hiruzen asked. Did you think we wouldn't approve? That we would be angry? Honestly, yes, I did, Gigi. I'm not ashamed of my relationship with Koro-chan, far from it in fact. But could you imagine what would happen if word about us got out when neither of us is ready to tell people? Naruto spoke. A Konoha shinobi dating an IWA shinobi? It's unheard of. There are a lot of people in both our villages that would sooner see hell freeze over than let that happen. Gigi, are you angry at me for keeping this for you? Naruto whispered. Do you disapprove of us? Hiruzen let out another sigh as he rubbed his forehead. This was honestly not a situation he thought he was going to be in concerning Naruto. I'm not mad, Naruto. I'm honestly just surprised. In all my years I thought you would have eventually found a nice girl in the leaf to settle down with one day, to fall in love and start a family with. You falling in love with an IWA shinobi, the granddaughter of their current Sechikage no less, is a lot for these old bones to take in. I know it's hard to imagine, Gigi. I never thought I would fall in love with her either. When it happened I was just as surprised as you are right now. I didn't know how it was going to work or how we would prove to everyone that's it real, but none of that really matters to me anymore. I love her, Gigi, and I don't want to be with anyone else. Naruto admitted. She's just, when I'm with her I just feel whole, as if when she's next to me everything around me just looks and feels clearer. Do you understand what I mean? He did understand what Naruto meant. He understood as what Naruto described was how he felt with Biwako. Yes, Naruto. I understand what you mean. Naruto, you understand that with this relationship the potential outcomes of revealing it not only to your family but to her family in both your respective villages might not be a happy one given our history. I know. It's why we have been waiting for the right time. Naruto told him. With Kuratsuchi acting as the envoy and voice of her grandfather in peace talks, what better time is there to reveal our relationship? It could even help the peace talks between our villages. Or it could destroy any hope of peace, Hiruzen told him, causing Naruto to deflate a little. But I can't deny the optimism. It could have potential success if handled correctly, and a lot of explaining is given to your families. So when do I get to meet her? Hiruzen asked, surprising Naruto, who gawked at him. You want to meet her? Naruto asked in a higher tone than he usually spoke. Of course. Now that I know, it would be rude of you not to introduce me to her. Hiruzen told him. Bring her to the Sarutobi compound in 2 days for dinner. I'll prepare my signature stew for us. To the Sarutobi compound? Won't that be a little suspicious if we enter in nice clothes together? Won't the other Sarutobi clan members talk? While he was happy that his grandfather figure wanted to meet his girlfriend, he was still a little concerned with other people finding out without their knowledge. He already slipped up once, and he hoped to Kami above that Kuratsuchi wouldn't get mad at him for them being discovered by Hiruzen. Well, if your secrecy skills are as good as they were tonight, then perhaps you need to start practicing more on your espionage skills, my boy. Or would you prefer we have another lesson? Perhaps even Kuratsuchi can join us, since it appears she will be sticking around for a while. No, that's okay, Gigi. It's all good. I'll make sure to be more stealthy. I promise. Good. I expect no more secrets of this magnitude between us from now on, Naruto. Understood? He asked, but the tone of his voice was clearly in his Hokage voice that Naruto recognized. Yes, Gigi. You got it. Forest of Death. You okay, Sakura? Eiji called out as he stood over the unconscious body of an AIM shinobi who was face down on the ground breathing ragged breaths through his breathing mask. He kept one of his tri-pronged kunai pointed towards the down genin and keeping an eye on him from the corner of his eye as he looked over towards his pink-haired teammate. Sakura had a few scratched on her and her clothes had gotten torn in a few places but were relatively fine. Her training with Shizen had come into full effect when they encountered the AIM genin, and it got put to good use when one of the AIM genin quickly began targeting her as his teammates focused on Eiji and Sasuke. I'm okay, Eiji. A little out of breath, but I'm okay. Sakura responded as she looked down at the dead genin at her feet. It was her first kill as a shinobi and could already feel her hands shaking as she just stared down at the body. The blood was seeping out of the genin's neck where she had managed to cut his throat after he got distracted from Eiji and Sasuke taking out his comrades. She had watched as his hands went straight to his throat but it little to stop the bleeding. Soon enough he collapsed to the ground and stopped moving entirely as his life slipped away. It was bound to happen eventually. You can cry later when you're on your own. I don't Eiji and Sasuke to see. This was her first kill. Eiji thought, noticing a similar look on her face. He had his first kill 2 months ago. He remembered getting home and crying into his mother's arms, who had deduced what had happened when she saw the look on his face. She had held him for about 10 minutes before she began talking to him about it. His father did the same when he got home and made sure he knew what he did was justifiable, that he was following orders and protecting himself. Sasuke, have you got the scroll? Sasuke had his opponent beaten and tied to a tree with ninja wire, looking a little out of breath but otherwise unharmed. He put his hand in his pocket and pulled out the earth scroll for his teammates to see. Eiji grinned while Sakura smiled. That was the hard part done in their minds. Now all they had to do was get to the tower in the middle of the forest. Eiji had made a clone to scout the tops of the trees who had managed to see the tower some ways off in the distance. If Sakura's math was right, which it normally was, then it would take them about 20 minutes to reach if they pushed themselves. None of them had the desire to stay in the monster-filled forest any longer than they needed, so the choice was easy for them. We'll go straight to the tower. There's no point for us being out here any longer. We have what we came for, so let's finish the second task before any of the other teams find us. Sasuke told them as he put away his weapons. Sakura did the same while Eiji thumped the down-aimed shinobi in the back of the head, knocking him out and no longer making him a viable threat. I know we've only been out here since yesterday, but I'm already missing my bed. Keeping an eye open for bandits in the middle of the night is way different to looking out for giant snakes and spiders in the night. Sakura told her teammates as they picked up some of their loose equipment they had used and lost during the battle. You and me both, Sakura. Eiji agreed, as did Sasuke, who merely nodded. Now let's get out of here. The trio stood together and leaped up into the trees and was about to begin running at top speed when a voice appeared out of nowhere. I'm afraid it won't be so easy. All three of them whipped their heads to the side to find one of the Kusa shinobi from earlier leaning against the tree with her arms folded, looking right at them. Her voice made a shiver go down their spines and noticed she was looking at them in a way a snake looked at a mouse. Immediately the three genins jumped away and landed on a thick branch a few meters away, with Sasuke and Eiji both standing in front of Sakura, kunais drawn and pointing towards. What do you want? Eiji demanded. Do you want our scrolls? Well, you can't have them. Yeah, Sakura added. You have to go through us if you want them. To their surprise, however, the girl simply laughed. Her laugh, though, made the hairs on the back of their necks stand on edge. It sounded so menacingly, so eerie that the trio couldn't help but take a small step back. She's not scared. We outnumber her 3-1 and she's not scared in any way. Eiji thought. Is she like Haku? Have we met someone of that level? I don't like this. Something about her feels off. Sasuke thought. Deciding it was wise not to let their guard down around this person, Sasuke activated his Sharingan, his eyes now spinning with two red eyes with one Tomo in one eye and two in the other. To their surprise, however, as soon as Sasuke activated his Sharingan, a large smile appeared on the girl's face and they watched as a long tongue appeared out of the girl's mouth. She was practically salivating at the mere sight of Sasuke's Sharingan. "What I want, you ask?" She chuckled again before the trio watched in panic and disgust as her hands came up to her face and peeled off a small portion of her face, revealing skin so white it could match snow and golden eyes with a slit for a pupil. "I want you, Sasuke." Before Sasuke, Sakura and Eiji could say a single word, the girl was suddenly in front of them in the blink of an eye and kicked Eiji squared in the gut, knocking him off the branch and down to the ground. Fast. I didn't even see him move. Sasuke thought before jumping away when the girl's attention turned to him. She paid no mind to Sakura and instead just followed after Sasuke. Sakura watched as the dangerous girl chased after Sasuke before stealing her nerves and went after her. Down below, Eiji winced as he slowly got up, holding his stomach with the wind knocked out of him. She's no normal genin. Her kicks are like iron. Weaving in and out of trees, Sasuke watched as the girl chased after him and was quickly catching up with him. Going through a few hand signs, he shouted fire style, fireball jutsu. A large fireball shot straight towards the girl, however to his surprise the girl simply endured it and came out of the fireball with blackened skin that was burnt all over. "You'll have to do better than that," she said, a sick smile on her face before lunging towards him. Sasuke reacted as fast as he could and pulled out multiple kunai and threw them towards her. They hit their mark and a small explosion went off that knocked Sasuke back. Looking up from his down position, Sasuke watched as gulped when he saw the girl come out of the explosion again looking exactly the same as before. Gripping his fist tightly, Sasuke went through more hand signs. Fire-style Phoenix Flower Jutsu. The fire streamed through the air with multiple flower-shaped fireballs going towards the girl, however instead she gracefully dodged all of the attacks. She made it look so easy that Sasuke couldn't help but wonder who she was. Before Sasuke could let out another attack, the girl lunged at him again but, this time, managed to grab him and pin him to the tree with a hand wrapped around his throat. Sasuke struggled to breathe as her grip was iron tight. He felt her other hand come up and pull down his collar to expose his neck. Opening her mouth wide, Sasuke's eyes grew wide when a freakily large set of fang appeared in her mouth and aimed for the side of his neck. He tried to struggle but with his throat being crushed he didn't get the sufficient air supply to keep moving. Just as the fangs were about to touch the skin, the sound of swirling could be heard. The girl growled in annoyance before jumping away as Eiji appeared. "Rasengan!" He shouted as aimed for the girl's chest. Before it could land, however, the girl grabbed his hand before it could make contact and swung him through the air. Eiji was suddenly thrown into the air but somehow managed to land on the side of the tree, sticking to the bark thanks to the tree walking technique. My to know such a technique at such a young age. "I see your parents have taught you well," the girl said in a mocking tone. "But you're not the one I want. Leave and I might let you live. Stay and you will die." Sakura appeared next to Sasuke and checked his throat over for any kind of damage while Eiji glared at the girl. "Forget it. No way am I leaving a teammate behind. I am a shinobi of the leaf and we don't leave our comrades behind. You want him, you go through me." The girl sighed as Eiji summoned two clones around him. "So young. What a pity you had to die too soon." Bringing up her thumb, she bit into the skin where she then drew a line of her own blood on a tattoo that was on her wrist. Summoning Jutsu. A large puff of smoke appeared, knocking Eiji and destroying his two clones immediately. Putting a hand over his face, he waved away some of the smoke but quickly regretted it a moment later when a large pair of golden eyes was looking back at him. "Snake!" Eiji shouted when the snake lunged right at him, jaws open wide. Eiji tried to get away but instead found the girl suddenly beside him and kicked him hard once again directly into the snake's mouth. Eiji's eyes went wide as fear gripped his heart as the world around him began going dark before he found himself landing and sliding down the throat of the enormous snake. "AG!" Sakura shouted as Sasuke looked at the snake in shock. Neither could believe what had just happened as they watched the snake turn its attention to them. Its tongue flicked out of its mouth as the girl landed on top of its head, looking right back at Sasuke. "Girl, if I were you, I would run." I want to say it a third time. The bodies of Sasuke and Sakura both shook and both fell to their knees when a huge amount of killing intent suddenly hit them like a boulder. Both couldn't move as the force was just too much for either of them to bear. It was like Zabuza back in Wave Country, yet 10 times greater. So great they could barely breathe. As the girl was about to step off the snake, once again a swirling sound could be heard, but this time, it came from beneath them. Sakura and Sasuke both looked down and watched as the side of the snake's stomach suddenly burst open in a shower of blood and guts. Both covered their eyes as some of its body contents rained down through the air and splashed over the trees and the ground. However, Sakura and even Sasuke felt a wave of relief when they watched Eiji push himself out of the now dead snake and fall to the ground along with the snake. Eiji coughed and spat out some of the blood from the snake that had gotten into his mouth. "I'm never doing that again," he muttered before steadily standing up. His legs were shaking as the shock of what happened ran through him. A mix of fear and adrenaline was currently coursing through his body before he focused his attention back on the girl that had caused the gross incident that just happened. "My Kachan doesn't like it when I swear, but since she's not around I think I can get away with it," he said before grabbing one of his kunai tightly. "Get the hell away from them, you bitch." My, what a mouth you have," she taunted before Eiji bolted towards her and began engaging in taijutsu. His aim to kill, specifically towards her neck and heart. He was tired of what was supposed to be an easy pass to the next task. He threw punches and kicks towards her head only for the girl to either block or dodge the swipes, pushing him away a moment later, but Eiji didn't stop as he kept going. The two remained in that state for about 2 minutes and Eiji felt his temper spiking at how easy this girl was blocking his strikes. It was like she was putting no effort into her movements. Water style, water bullet jutsu. Dozens of large glumps of water shot out of Eiji's mouth towards his opponent, fully intent on hurting this girl or worse. However, like with the fire jutsu, the girl dodged the bullets gracefully and instead the attacks just impacts the trees and the ground. "Sasuke, we need to help Eiji," Sakura told her teammate, but saw Sasuke was in a state of shock and fear, barely moving his body at all as his eyes just watched his teammate fight a battle he couldn't win. "We can't win. She's too strong. We're gonna die," Sasuke whispered, but Sakura had heard him. She looked ready to cry as those words came out his mouth. Had Sasuke really given up just like that? The boy she had a crush on for so long was just giving up like that while their teammate was fighting an impossible battle? She wasn't. She couldn't just give up, so Sakura did something she thought she would never do. She raised her hands and she slapped Sasuke across the face, stunning him out of his fear at looking at her in surprise. "You might have given up, but I won't. I won't let our teammate fight this battle alone," she shouted at him before slowly standing up and going towards the fight. She knew she didn't stand a chance, but she wasn't going to let her fear control her while her teammate fought an impossible battle. She grabbed a kunai from her pouch and got involved. "Sakura," Sasuke thought as the watched Sakura jump in. As soon as she did, the Kusa shinobi showed no interest in fighting her. If anything, Sasuke thought she looked more annoyed at the battle she was stuck in. Her gaze flickered back towards him, clearly not taking the battle seriously. "Hey! Don't ignore us!" Eiji shouted, going through hand signs as he prepared to fire a jutsu. "Water style wa dash." Eiji stopped mid-sentence and felt his entire body suddenly go numb as a rush of pain that he had never felt before engulfed his stomach. He vaguely heard Sakura scream bloody murder and his gaze flickered momentarily towards Sasuke, whose face morphed into one of horror. His gaze slowly went down to his stomach and coughed out a glob of blood that landed on the tree branch. Going straight through his stomach was a sword with a gold handle that was being wielded by the lengthy tongue of his opponent. The girl showed no interest in him, looking back only at Sasuke as if further mocking just how insignificant she found him. The horrid sound of the blade coming out of his stomach made his hands reach for the wound before he fell to his knees as he felt his body shut down from shock. He fell to the side and ended up falling off the tree they were standing on. All Eiji could hear as his vision began to blur and darken was Sakura screaming his name and the dark eerie chuckle coming from the Kusa shinobi. "Eiji?" Mito whispered as she looked off to the left, stopping at the top of a nearby tree. Shikamaru and Sai both saw her suddenly stop and stopped as well a moment later. Mito wasn't sure why she stopped, but this shiver went up her spine that brought the hairs up on the back of her neck. She held her hand to her chest, her eyes going soft and looking concerned as she looked off in the distance. Her heart felt like something was gripping it tightly and was actually causing her some discomfort. She felt fine just a moment ago, but as if out of nowhere the thought of her twin suddenly popped into her mind and the pain started. Mito? What is it? Shikamaru asked, appearing beside her. Sai said nothing and just watched. I don't know. She admitted, and she really didn't know. Something feels wrong. I can't explain it. I think something happened to Eiji. Naruto's entire body froze mid-stride as he made his way towards the Hokage Tower. He was on his way to visit his father, who at this time was likely still having talks with Kuratsuchi and was taking over a bento box his mother had prepared for him. The day had gone pretty normal and he had gotten some training done in the morning after a rather stressful night's sleep. The whole thing with Hiruzen having kept him up for a few hours before managing to eventually get some sleep. He knew his brother and sister were somewhere in the forest of Deed at this moment of time and had been making sporadic checks up on them with his sensory skills to check they were okay. Everything so far felt fine and he guessed they were doing okay. At least, that was until just a moment ago. AG. His chakra just dropped hard. It's gone so low. Dangerously low. He thought. Someone's chakra only goes that way when. AG. He shouted, scaring the people around him. He threw the bento box on the ground and took off at full speed towards the forest of death. AG. Sakura screamed and went to jump after him, however, she, Sasuke and the Kusa shinobi were all surprised when Eiji's limp body suddenly vanished from midair, leaving no trace of where it had gone. Where did the body go? The Kusa shinobi thought before a rare feeling went up her spine. A chill. Where did that come? She stopped and slowly turned her head when a powerful chakra signature suddenly appeared just a few meters from her. She slowly turned her head and for the first time today she let her nerves get tested as a pair of fully matured Sharingan span dangerous at her. Sasuke turned his head to his right and for the first time in a very long time Sasuke let out a choked sob at who stood next to him. Even Sakura, who quickly jumped over to them, was letting a few tears leak out as hope finally showed itself to them. Itachi Uchiha, dressed in his umbu gear and mask resting on top of his head, stood next to his younger brother with an unconscious and wounded Eiji Namikaze gently held in his arms. The boy was breathing, but it was shallow and the blood was still leaking out of the wound. He looked down and felt pain grip his heart as he looked at the wounded little brother of his best friend. I should have got here sooner. He was able to give me the slip and my mistake have had consequences. Sasuke, Itachi spoke, getting Sasuke's attention. Go with the clone towards the tower. The clones will heal Eiji as much as he can to keep him alive before medics can see to him. I want you and Sakura to run as fast as you can to the tower. Do not stop for anyone or anything. Once you are at the tower, tell the nearest Chunin or join what happened and tell them to get the Hokage and his wife. Is that understood? Both Genin couldn't speak but just nodded as Itachi handed Eiji over to the clone. As soon as he did, the clone bolted through the trees straight to the tower. He would be there in a minute or two at top speed, while behind him Sasuke and Sakura quickly followed, briefly looked behind back at Itachi for a moment before looking back straight ahead. Knowing they now out of harm's way, or at least away from the shinobi that stood in front of him, Itachi's hand that soaked in Eiji's blood went to his side and quickly turned into a fist that lightly shook. Itachi wasn't someone who liked his emotions getting the better of him, but now was one of that moment where despite his calm appearance and stoic face he felt his blood boil and his anger pushing against will. Orochimaru, he whispered as looked right into the golden eye of who was truly lying behind that skin. So you know who I am? The Kusa shinobi asked. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised from the genius of the Uchiha clan. Perhaps now I can finally get out of this skin. Bringing his hand up, the shinobi ripped away the other side of the tan skin until what was left was the face of a shinobi that the entire world was fully aware of. He threw off the headband and ran a hand through his long black hair before grinning towards Itachi. It was so stuffy behind that skin. "You made a mistake coming here," Itachi told him, but all he got was a chuckle from the pale shinobi. "My only mistake was not finishing the blonde brat quicker. Perhaps I should have aimed for the throat or the heart. Either way, it matters not. While I would have preferred Sasuke since he's so young, I guess you will have to do. Though this might take a little longer than I planned given your reputation." Orochimaru's gaze fixed itself on Itachi as he looked hungrily towards the red eyes that bore down on him. His tongue licked his lips, and yet Itachi showed no signs of being intimidated. "Admitting that you came here for Sasuke and gloating that you hurt a child I have known since he was a baby was the biggest mistake you could have made," was all Itachi whispered before Orochimaru flew through the air with the sword that had wounded Eiji sticking out of his mouth. It all happened in a matter of seconds, and yet it was all that it took for the tables to be turned. 1 second Orochimaru had all the confidence in the world as he felt the prize that he had wanted for so long was finally in his grasp. The next, however, that confidence was shattered as the shape of a black pinwheel suddenly engulfed him.
That's it for today. Remember to show your support to the creator of this story if you enjoyed it. If you would like more parts of the story to be uploaded, leave a comment and subscribe to get notified when the story continues. Bye-bye for now, and I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.